What's up, troopers? This is going to be the first in our series of going over each one of the battle cards that we have in the first iteration of New Legion. And we figured we would start with the one that is maybe the simplest, but even then there's a lot of nuance. So we're talking about Close the Pocket as far as our first primary. Uh, this is one where there's not any, you're not handing off tokens to anybody. There's nothing really all that special about the way that scoring is done, apart from the thing, which is that the middle counts for two and the ones on the side count for one, and that's it. And it leads to this situation where a fight for the middle is like usually the thing that dictates what goes on in these games. There can be some side cases, but Mike, maybe we should start with this is, with the list that you play. Do you have a strategy that is like all encompassing for Close the Pocket, or does it depend to a large degree on what the units are on your list?
I think it depends to a large degree on what units are in your list.
Okay.
In that units with infiltrate and scout are change how you can play this objective pretty substantially.
Yeah.
In that they allow you to be more aggressive and or take the middle quicker.
Hmm.
Whereas if you don't have those things, you are going to be doing a lot less shooting early on, or you're probably losing. Um, because
Accurate.
yeah, I mean it is a race to the middle, but the units that are good at racing to the middle are also units that are good at aggressing in the side deployment zones against weak sides as well.
Yeah.
And your opponent is often going to either have to choose to completely give up one of the lesser sides, or have a weak side, in which case you can use those units that are not only good at bombing the middle, but they can kind of deal with those flanks pretty easily as well.
Yeah, because it takes, if you're deploying as close as possible, and if you're a standard speed 2 infantry unit, it takes 3 moves to get there if you're running straight at it. Um, but in a lot of maps, you really don't want to run straight at it, because if you were doing that, you would be like placing yourself like really out in the open.
Yep.
Uh, Terrain matters a ton in the, and so like this would be an example of if you're a blue player, then I would, the thing that I look at most is the side that has terrain that gives me a good sort of staging point before rushing the middle.
Yep.
That can be really, really helpful to you, because if like you have the side where it's like open in the middle, or in the center of the long side, it's really tough to like get there safely. So I do think that that is an important aspect. And so, to what extent are you like, as you're doing this deployment, it's usually gonna it's usually gonna happen that you have a strong side and your opponent's strong side is gonna be probably like on the other corner, so to speak. Sometimes you might be deploying your strong sides directly against each other, which can be very wacky games, but usually people are a little bit more defensive and squirrely. And so if I'm using, if you're looking at the map as you're seeing it up here, is that if I'm deploying on the bottom right, then fairly often my opponent will be deploying on the top left, and vice versa. But as deployment is going on, um, once those sides are established, like what are your thoughts about what you do on your opponent's strong side in terms of deploying your own units?
Yeah, so I probably play this objective like significantly more aggressive than most people based on your current description. I will actually generally figure out which side my opponent is loading, and then I will attempt to load it as well.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason for that is I'm generally playing a bunch of aggressive units. I'm playing arcs, commandos, Anakin, whatever, some barks
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. And my main thing is I am trying to get them to, I will often try to bait them into a shot that allows my arcs to come in off one of the short edges and actually just start annihilating things.
Hmm.
Um, and by like kind of like maybe deploying a clone infantry like a little bit too far forward so that they kind of stick their nose out a little bit too far, um, and kind of surprise them with the range you can gain from coming off one of the short edges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that does get to where we talked about what the stuff that's in your list should be dictating the strategy. The thing that's been on my mind the most, just like in terms of the list I've been playing like lately, has been a Dooku Aqua list, and so in that situation, I would like as was typical, I would be saving the Aquas for last, and so sometimes they might be deploying on my opponent's strong side to like get some easy shots at something, and then Aquas are so hard to kill that it sort of demands your opponent's attention a little bit more while the rest of my units are sort of racing towards the middle. But I guess usually the way that I'm thinking about it is that uh, I I'm trying to get close to the middle while being safe as aggressively as possible with all of my units. In some games that would have meant like using my aquas as a shield themselves if the terrain was not going to be helpful to me.
Sure.
But generally, like with most lists that I've played, the name of the game is going to be to try to be controlling the middle on turn two and then never give it up. You can come back from behind in this, but if you lose the middle for rounds 2 and 3, you're probably not coming back from that. So like you need to like not be sort of surprised by the fact that that it's like turn 3 and your units have been like taking aim shoots on the side, and sort of like concentrating on one side or the other, and your opponent really owns the middle. Like once you're there, you're kind of kaput. So, but at the same time, like there are situations where even if a strong side weak side is established, that you can dive your opponent's weak side.
Yep.
Like what are the units that you think of most in terms of being able to do that?
I think speeder bikes, arcs, barks, Bad Batch is great.
Yeah,
Yeah, Bad Batch is maybe the. I would want if I was going to do it with Bad Batch, I would probably want to send another unit with it so that that side didn't have to get held by my 160 point super important unit. Um, but I think anything that's fast moving, they can collapse a flank easily. I think often you'll see in these situations where maybe both players have decided that one side is the weak side for both of them. They'll both like deploy like a naked core unit over there or something, and like all of a sudden, like if one person also dedicates a specialist unit, all of a sudden they just kind of win that side for very cheap.
yeah.
Um, so I would recommend kind of taking that pulse.
So I wonder if we can, before we summarize, is there anything else that you wanted to say about Close the Pocket?
I do. I think maybe I think a lot of people, at least in the beginning of Legion, were like, "Oh man, this is like a very clone centric objective because it is like very tight. Like you can kind of just like take all your clones and throw them in the middle." Um, I think what I would like to kind of like change people's perspective on that a little bit. I don't
Mm,
actually think that's true, and I actually think that this is one of the more high movement objectives, because you have to bum rush the middle. You have to get there very quickly.
yeah,
Um, you need to be, you were saying like aim shooting on the sides, like you never like if you're aim shooting with units on the sides, like you are losing.
yeah,
You
yeah,
are going to lose this objective. And not only that, if you are scoring the side objectives, the units that are scoring the side objectives need to be able to get to the middle to fight. Whether that's they're able to contribute their dice pools at range because they're strike teams and can shoot range 5,
mm-hmm.
or they can get there quickly because they're like a bark speeder or imperial speeder bike or whatever. You need to have a plan for that, and you need to be able to like at the end of the day, like everybody is going to end up in the middle of the table, and if you are the player that can't get 4 of their units there, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I usually think about it in terms of my slower units. I try to have them in a place where they're able to contest the middle, but that if they needed to rush back to like my strong side point to be able to deal with the speeder that's rushing me, that they can do that. Versus if my slower units are on my opponent's strong side, then they're probably just going to die, and they're sort of wasting their time. So like I personally still end up with an army that is fairly consolidated, kind of like between my strong side and the middle, and that the only ones that are sort of diving out there are the fast movers, like you mentioned. So especially speeders or decas or things like that. So, all right, Mike. So to summarize, close the pocket. I think that we would say be conservative with your first few deployments. Uh, Consider whether side edge deployments are something that you might be able to exploit if your opponent overreaches. Um, be getting close to the middle as soon as possible with most of your army, and then be wary of your own ability and your opponent's ability to rush onto sort of your side of the board. If you have like one lowly core unit that's holding down your side, just like be wary of the fact that that can suddenly change if speeders or decas or geos are all of a sudden showing up in your doorstep. And at the same time, be prepared to do that to your opponent if they leave some units exposed out by that. So that's basically how we would summarize Close the Pocket. Uh, Let us know in the comments if there's different strategies that y'all have, and potentially we'll be responding to them, and that way people who are looking at this video can kind of get a variety of opinions. But otherwise, if you enjoy what we're doing, please do consider checking out our Patreon, and we'll see you next time.